Welcome to Heal the World Show podcast, brought to you by the Healing Institute. I'm Parmelia Parham, and I'm the founder of the Healing Institute, and we are an online worldwide hub of holistic practitioners. We are really out to make a difference with health and healing in the world. And the reason that this is so important to me, we're bringing holistic wellness and health to practitioners and also to people all over the world. Our hub it consists of holistic practitioners that are we actually get to the root cause of what's going on with you. So I've been using holistic health and healing for a very long time, for over 30 years, and we know that it works. And the reason that we know that the holistic way of looking at health and healing works is because we've used it all. And our medical model that we've had for the last 50 odd years isn't actually working anymore. Even if it did, I'm not sure if it ever did, but and the reason is because we don't just look at symptoms. We are actually looking at the root cause of what's going on. So each week I invite a healer to come and be my guest co-host on the podcast. And we talk about healing and we talk about health and how that can impact people. And this month is June, so I decided it's going to be Men's Health Month. And so I've had a number of wonderful gentlemen coming to talk about men's health and how important that is. Now, we seem to have, I think, a little bit of a technology glitch right now in the fact that the person who's my co-host today is not been able, he's hopping on and hopping off. So I want to just explain why this is so important to me. We did have a tragedy in our family a number of years ago, in that my mom passed away at a very young age. She was only 61. And it was right before Christmas. It was due to complications because she'd been on a medication for a very long time. And not once did we ever know, or were we ever told by her medical team that in fact being on this medication for a long time was going to compromise her kidneys. So unfortunately, she passed away just before Christmas. I was 5 months pregnant with my son. And I say it's not only a tragedy that she died so young, but it's a tragedy because my children didn't get to meet their grandmother. And I really don't want that happening for any other families. So I want to welcome Brian Baird today. He's a transformational coach as well as many other things. And we really want to have a conversation about men and health for Men's Health Month. So Brian, welcome. I'm delighted that you're here today.
I'm glad to be here. So I've often wondered when it came to talking about men's health, so to speak, is like, how deep do people go? Like, what is their biggest concern? I talk to a lot of people, like, number one focus in general in life is sleep.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's other things I think that happen with men that may be more, I mean, to be fair, we shouldn't be performative, but men are taught to be things that are more shields up, warrior-like, very common. So, so they having any kind of health issue that makes you look weak or frail, or you're slowing down, or all this, it can be very emotionally debilitating, not just physically distracting. So the question is, what is it that men's health should really be about? And it probably is the whole facet, right? Mental,
Yes.
emotional, spiritual. How do you manage life in that way? So I didn't know how deep we were going to go in this conversation, but I just know that we have lots of ground to cover. You're not just with you and me talking today, but for the whole month, you're exposing this subject to the public.
Yeah. And some of the conversation that we've had with on the other podcasts so far this month have been men identifying the fact that, yes, they have been raised to be the strong and not show weakness. And actually they've had to learn that and have to learn that showing vulnerability is not weakness. And
Right.
showing what realizing that we all can be vulnerable, regardless of, what gender we are. So learning how to sort of be pioneers, because I truly believe that we're pioneers in many ways. Men are pioneers just as much as women are pioneers in negotiating how life is in, 2025. So
Right.
tell us a little bit about your story.
In terms of my health, you think, or?
Yes.
Yeah, well, I have had most of my life a sense of invincibility, and perhaps for good cause. When I was younger, I was sickly in the sense I had frequent colds, 3 to 5 colds a year. I figured by the time I got into my mid 40s, I'd probably been sick a third of my life. But and also just as a side note, part of me, because the way the colds affected me, I always thought maybe that when my time came, it would be because of something with my lungs.
Mhm.
Like there's like an infection of some kind would
Right.
be what it was. So excuse me. So I'm coughing thinking about it. So
So that must have been very scary for you when COVID was around.
yes. Well, I had kind of a double whammy when it came to having COVID around, because I had through kind of an emotional or nurturing thing, I had picked up a little weight enjoying food a little bit more and I love food. I'm a foodie. I'm
Don't
a
we all?
wholehearted foodie.
Yeah.
But on the flip side of that is I was enjoying it a bit too much. And so I had become, in the early parts of COVID, I had kind of, I wasn't morbidly obese or anything like that, but I had picked up a little of the markers for making it more challenging if I had gotten COVID, which I ultimately got last year for the first time. But the other thing that happened in that part of the journey was I had a diagnosis of lung cancer. So I ended up having a piece of my lung removed. That was the option I took. I have been absolutely great ever since. So it was an early catch, early decision, get it done. But it was one of those things where you get that different kind of exposure to mortality than just the
Mhm.
usual guesswork.
Yeah. Yeah. Ooh, I think we froze just for a minute. Yeah, we're having a few little technical challenges today, but that's all right. That's what happens. Hopefully Brian doesn't go away completely. He'll come back. The last time that the freezing happened, then we lost him for a few minutes. So we'll just wait and see. So, okay, we did lose him. All right. So it is, I think, has been a deterrent for, okay, I think he's back. Wonderful.
So
Okay.
how was that story?
The story was, well, we kind of lost you a little bit, so
I
you might
know.
want to repeat the story.
So I don't know where I lost you
You
or
were
vice
just
versa.
talking about the fact that you had been diagnosed with lung cancer and
Yeah.
you had it.
So I didn't know I had originally had this sort of, as I said, the sense of invincibility. I thought like I have another 60 years in me. And then I got this diagnosis, which was like, oh, I don't even know if I have 6 months. So you rapidly shift around it wasn't about a fear of death, by the way. It was just rapidly saying, this is what do I want to do with the quality of my time, whatever that is, whether it's 60 more years or 6 months. And and it was really kind of it gives you perspective on how to choose this wellness health discussion, because so much of the
Exactly.
time we stall our health and wellness discussions because it's not expedient in what we're working on. I have this job, I have this objective, I have to make this kind of money, I have to pay off this house first, or whatever, or I going through a divorce, or whatever it is that's going on. And when you have all these other moving parts, we tend to put self-care on the back burner. And
Yeah.
and it might show up in ways of going to the gym or whatever, but very often going to the gym is a modest way to improve mental health, which I think is the root of all health. Mental health slash spiritual health. I see them, for me personally, they're linked. So
I agree.
having
Yeah.
having no certainty about life can make you appreciate it much more too. And so you get much more focused on how to do things. So I encourage people to think about what it would be like to have a critically important limiting, whether it's life shortening or other kind of thing. Just imagine what it would be like to get a kind of a diagnosis that says you need to start respecting your time in your life differently. And then once whatever that feeling is comes up, harness it and go, because it's going to get there one way or the other. You might as well have a better opportunity to learn to love life. And since that diagnosis and since the surgery, I am more in love with life than I've ever been. I don't love every moment. I'm very, I tell people that all the time. There are moments when it's just like not making, but in general, life has been more exciting, more adventurous. I have a stronger sense of curiosity. And then the beautiful part about it is, you know me, Permelia, for quite a while, you know that I have a downloaded heart for service. I don't think I was always in that place, but it just kind of got downloaded into me about a decade ago. And I get so much out of helping, guiding, serving. That's it. And I think that's a really powerful way for mental health, by the way. If you can live in a grounded place of service, it really can boost your mental health.
And it comes back like, 100-fold, when you are actually giving from a service standpoint, from your heart, not that you're giving to get, but by giving from that servant's heart, or if you want to explain it that way, there's just so much that shows up.
Right.
That's been my experience since I've been on this wellness journey. And I think, as I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, the wake up call for me, I think, was losing my mom at a young age, because, when you're in your 60s, you still think you've got another 30 to 40 years possibly. And the fact that she was taken very, very quickly, really made me have to think about, okay, how do I want my health to be? And I was in my mid-30s at the time when she died. So I immediately started to put more holistic ways of looking at my health into my life, eating more, eating healthier, and making sure that I was exercising more often, and following more of a holistic, healthy mindset, which I think, as you were mentioning, the mental capacity of who we are, is so very important.
Well, it turns out that if you can give without conditions, studies have shown your health at all levels boosts.
Increases. Yeah.
It increases considerably. Partly, I think the major thing is most studies, when they look at them at a mechanical level, notice how important it is for us to have connection, and especially in North America, most of us are starving for connection. It's not so incredible to me that we have so much disease to manage in North America, partly because the systems, especially in the United States, but they tend to be sickness management models.
Yeah.
So they're not really focused on like boosting people's morale and their energy and their sense of attachment and love and all these other things, and which are more studies have shown them that when we're able to give somebody the sense of connection and love and other things, their health at every level will go up. So, how do we boost
we've been
that?
in a reactive illness society for way too long.
Reactive to illness, but it's also, I think a lot of this is born out of the fact that we are taught at a fairly young age to kind of be, I guess we'll say, fiercely independent. This is a North American thing in particular, right?
Yeah.
And the reason why I say that is because a lot of these North America, for good or for bad, I'm not going to talk about the immigration that took place from Europe over here and all the harm that it did to others, but the thing I would point out is that a lot of people that came here were kind of rebels in their home country.
Mhm.
So they come with a lot of independent streak in it anyway. So I think there's a little bit of a genetic factor in that. So a lot of North Americans are like taught from the early on, pick yourself up by your bootstraps, rugged individualism.
Yeah,
You know, you are the warrior. You can do, especially with men, you are the tough one. You're the
yeah.
provider. You're the one who's going to have to show character and character with a certain definition and so on. So I think those things are all actually detractants to optimal mental health, because what we end up not being is ourselves. We end up
Yes.
being a pretender for social convenience, and that pretense sets us up for illness. And I'm certain of it. I mean, I don't have a site to absolutely confirm it, but I just, all the people I meet who are sick, every
Yeah,
last one of them.
and there's a bit of a mindset too about being ill is, well, then you're going to get help. Now, you might not be getting the help really that you need,
Yeah.
but you think you need it. And you know, the help that's available is based on the medical model that we've had for the last
Mm.
50 years. And as I mentioned
Yep.
earlier, it's looking at the symptom of what's going on. It's not looking at what the
Yeah.
root cause
Yeah.
is.
The allopathic model cures very little, if at all, because it's really, as you just said, it was designed to mask the symptoms or kind of help you put up with the symptoms, but it doesn't reverse any of the things that you've done. And I'm going to be very careful about how I say this, because I know about certain parts of the world where there are regulations and you can't make medical claims. But I will, point out that if there are people who are medical practitioners who have had tremendous amount of success showing people more holistic, powerful, meaningful ways at a physiological level in particular to support their health. And I'm all for those people, those practitioners out there sharing their wisdom. The thing that we were starting to talk about here is what's the category of mental health structure that we provide for people. First of all, we still are at the tag end of a period when men didn't do any mental health support because it
Right.
would be a sign of weakness if you searched for that
Yes,
kind of help.
that's right.
And so it's just now in the last maybe 10 years got to a point where it's reasonable for a man to pursue mental health counseling or support. I'm not a big fan of talk therapies, but it's just to say that, as a hypnotherapist, I see rapid modalities available.
Mhm.
But the flip side of that is, whether if talk therapy is all you can get, at least you get that. And
Well,
the
and
idea
men
here is,
are now, society is more accepting that men can
Mhm.
now at least be looking and asking. It's not a sign of weakness to say that you need help.
Yeah,
It
but
is,
the flip side of this is we live in a society with some multiple storylines that take
Mhm.
place. I was going to use the word standards, but standards just come out of stories anyway. So I was when the woman I was dating after my marriage, um, I can remember distinctly. There were other things that might have been going on, but I can remember distinctly a moment where I was my father-in-law. I got a phone call. My father-in-law, who had been my buddy during the marriage for years, was in the hospital and might not go home. He had a
Mm.
heart attack of some kind. So, and I was on a cruise with my, I don't know what you want to call her, but
Then partner.
my then partner. And I was sitting in a bar eating something, having a drink, and got the phone call, and then I started crying. And I remember distinctly the change in her posture at that moment. It was, even though anybody else will say, I want a man who's sensitive and can be vulnerable, I don't think she was on that list. And I think there are a lot of people who may say they want a man who is vulnerable and sensitive and understanding in that regard, but then what happened to me
Yeah.
could happen to anybody, because there could be
When it
another
finally
story in there
shows up. Hmm.
that shows up.
Yeah.
And I'm not living, it's not a bittersweet moment, because even though I remember the moment and how that what further engagement happened or disengagement happened after that, it was more like, for me, it was just like, I need to be much more careful about looking for somebody who's more in support of a
Yes.
mentally healthy outlook than looking for somebody who might, and I didn't test for that red flag.
Yeah. Yeah.
So now I would test for that red flag, or I mean, test is not the right word, but I would be examining
You'd be,
the
yeah, you'd be
relationship
watching.
opportunity to make sure that that person was looking for somebody who was truly capable of being sensitive without worrying about whether or not they were being weak.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I often say that we are now in that space where we need to be creating a proactive wellness society so that we can be really serving the the global population, because we have everyone that I get the opportunity to meet a lot of people in different countries, and every country has their own challenges of how health wise, how they want to show up. And that's why I see I see the Healing Institute as the bridge between the allopathic, the old medical model, and the holistic. So I like to say that we're positioned there, because we've had our toes in both camps, and now we're not throwing out the allopathic model completely. I mean, if
Well, look,
I
I had lung surgery. That's a very allopathic approach.
absolutely,
So
yeah.
like, but the flip side of that is that the doctor I work with was fully in support of me not doing chemotherapy and radiation and all those other things because I was going to take other proactive steps. So the surgeon was 100% behind my approach. The oncologist begrudgingly got behind it because she realized I wasn't changing my mind, but I still go and see her, fairly routinely,
Mhm.
just because I'll be doing follow up probably for the rest of my life, just to be sure.
Right.
But the idea here is that you don't have to throw out allopathy, but it really makes
No.
sense to figure out where does allopathy and I hate to say this, that we call it the alternative, because the medicine that we call alternative today used to be the original
The
medicines, I
original
think.
medicine, right.
So, but the idea is whatever the non-allopathic models are, and there are various options out there, if it focuses on mental health included, then it's going to be likely a very powerful result will come out of it. So,
And you just said something that's really important. As we are navigating our health, um, and oftentimes we do need to have the allopathic, but we have to choose who that's going to be. And I had another a person on the podcast a while back who had to make a decision around having actual, she didn't want to have her cells taken away from a possible, could have been like a skin cancer. And
mhm.
she really had to say to her medical team, no, this is not, I'm not going to do the biopsy. I'm just going to, you can remove it. And they were finally very open to her having music in her ears that she could listen to, so she didn't have to didn't have to actually have anesthetic. So we have to choose, we have to pick and choose, and we have to know what we want, and then pick and talk to the medical
Yeah,
people
I
that
do though is that
can
what people
support
want,
us.
I hope, has some education behind it.
Oh yes.
Because one of the major challenges is a lot of people will pick up a belief without any evidence to back that belief up. And I always suggest to people, no matter what your beliefs are, please test them to make sure that there's evidence for them. Even if it's a religious belief, test it. I'm not telling you to not believe. I'm just telling you, let a belief have some sort of, whether it's personal data or other, let it have some data attached to it and not just an arbitrary tribal constructed, socially stigmatized or whatever else is attached to it. So the reason why I think that's really super, super important is because I've had people say to me, I don't believe in vitamins. Okay. So, first of all, it's an absurd statement at a broad level because vitamins are deeply ingrained in how some of our physiology works. But obviously they were talking about supplementation. But the other part about it is that there's a constant sense of, in certain circles, especially in the world of allopathy, they don't get trained beyond surgery,
That's right.
pharmaceuticals, and things like that. So nutrition, although I think it's gotten more and more likely to show up in the medical education for the longest time, the longest history, and we're weeding these doctors out by aging them out. They just believe you get all you need from what you eat. Of course, what we
Well, we
eat,
know that's
especially in
not
North
true.
America, is highly corrupt, right? So we're not eating food typically grown from the dirt in our backyard. We're eating food that came from thousands of miles away, that was picked early, sprayed to make sure it didn't get infested. by the time it gets here, it's completely altered from the kind of food that would be best if we could eat it straight out of the ground. So, okay. So putting that aside, is supplementation again, it's a nice, powerful somatic physiological type of approach to helping with your health, but it's just one step. Because I think you could take vitamins all day long, and if you're in a bad place mentally or
That's
emotionally,
right. Yeah.
you're going
Or
to likely
if
still
you're,
get sick.
if you're overeating. the
Or in
vitamins
my
aren't-
case, I was medicating,
Oh, by eating?
medicating with Oreos. So I don't know
Well,
if you
and
have Oreos in Canada, do
well,
you?
we do have Oreos,
Oh,
yes.
okay. So
Yeah, we know
yeah,
exactly what you're talking about.
yeah.
Well,
I,
and
I don't
that's
I
what's,
don't buy those puppies because I'll eat the whole bag.
oh,
So
there are certain things I don't buy because I can't stop eating them. So I
mm,
just won't go there. But again, that's I believe is the choices that we make. And something you said earlier was choosing, knowing what you're choosing. So,
mm,
and I've been saying this probably on every podcast, you have to do your research. You have to figure out what it is that you really, really want to have in your life and then research it. And when you're looking for any kind of medical, whether it's holistic or allopathic, make sure that you've done your research so that you know how it's going to affect you, and be aware, which is
right.
kind of the first step of being healthy is being aware.
Right. Now, as long as we're doing this, let me just point out, maybe people should understand that the Healing Institute, which is the sponsor of this podcast, has the opportunity to help people connect to that education.
Yes, most
Because
definitely.
one of the things that I think is there's a lot of information out there. How do you know what information to trust? And it really is, in some ways you have to follow the money to find out what the agenda is, and then decide from the agenda whether you trust the information or not. Because there's a
So
lot of
true.
stuff that's still snake oil-ish that's
Mhm.
out there. I talk a little bit jokingly because I do believe essential oils have their place, but I do talk a little bit jokingly because you're one of those people out there who is working for or with one of the essential oil supplement type companies, by the time you've drunk their Kool-Aid, you think that essential oils cure everything.
Mm.
So, oh, you have not enough money in your bank. There's an oil for that. Whatever the thing is that's going on. And I kind of like to say is that when you're doing your education, try not to just pick one avenue for assessment of whatever would or
Yeah,
would not work for you, because
important.
I think essential oils have their place. I think aromatics have their place. I believe vitamins have their place, but some vitamins are junk and some are not.
Yeah.
Um, Essential minerals that are out there, like we hardly in our culture in North America, I guess I'm speaking in broad strokes. I'm not sure how Canada works out in this area, but I'm sure it probably has some common issues. Is we do not get enough vitamin D and vitamin and
Mhm.
magnesium in our diets.
Yeah, that's
And
always
then
the
there's also
supplements that.
evidence that iodine is an underused,
Mhm. Mhm.
life element. And so there's a whole bunch of things we can do to become educated. So I'll tell you what, if you want to know everything, just talk to me and Premilia. We'll tell you everything you need to
We'll
know.
tell you, or come to the Healing Institute and talk to all of our practitioners because
There you go.
amongst all of us, we have some knowledge. Yes, we can
Yeah,
explain
but if it's
how
one
it
of the
all works.
beautiful things is how many people on your platform start with mental health,
How
right?
many start with
No, I was
mental
saying that
health?
what's the beautiful thing is there's a lot of the practitioners on the Healing Institute platform that start with
Start with
an
mental.
exam of
Yeah,
mental health as the start framework. Because if you're able to, now sometimes physiology needs to be enhanced because
Mhm.
mental health is tied to a physiological issue. But in a lot of cases, what we do to our self-care routine, which impacts all those things, starts with our mental health. And so if we can get help in that area, emotional stability, like El Marie has this emotional elixir experience type thing that she's getting ready to launch. And she's someplace on this connection here in the background. And one of the things I think that's beautiful about it is because it starts with our emotions, which I think if you can get to the root of what's going on there, it unravels a lot of other issues for easier
Absolutely.
management than if you just decided, oh, I'm going to take a vitamin. So yeah, usually by the time we're in trouble, it's not just the physiology.
No, you're right. And Marie's got a great comment here. Her favorite unhealthy medication is potato chips.
I'm right there with you, Laurie.
Yes.
I'm right there.
That's the one I don't buy because I would have to eat the whole bag.
Yeah.
And then she
I,
also says awareness is really, awareness is really where we all start with as we support our clients. Yes, exactly. And Marie is one of our practitioners, as well as Elle Marie, who's in the green room right now on the podcast. We all start with the support for our clients. Without awareness, change and transformation can't even get started. There's
right.
always an emotional connection to every physical ailment.
I would be cautious with that statement. Yes, I think there's often an emotional, most of the time, an emotional root to our, especially what we more popularly call degenerative diseases. But there are people who are born with genetic things like muscular dystrophy, or you just got COVID and it doesn't, yeah, maybe your immune system was a little weaker, and so you could argue I was under stress or whatever. But for the most part, I'm in really good emotional place for the last many years, and I got COVID eventually, and nothing I could do to stop that cavalcade from hitting my body. So, but I do agree in broad strokes what Marie said is that there's an emotional root to much of our illness.
Exactly. And of course, the work that I do with the body code, that is looking at the emotions that are trapped in the subconscious.
Mm-hmm.
So these emotions we need to be aware of what they are and where
Mm-hmm.
they've come from.
Mm-hmm.
So any other little gems you can impart today on men's health, Brian, before we wrap up?
I don't know if I would open just another can of worms of a conversation, but if I was going to suggest anything for men is that they allow themselves the ability to be available emotionally. It's not, I mean, even for me, even if I've done all this work and all this training to support leadership and the mental health improvements and the spiritual improvements that actually feed that leadership, because that's where I spend most of my energy in the leadership development. But when you get right down to it, is one of the things somebody has to be open to is receiving
Yes.
that information, or whether it's emotional data or information data, head data, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're not able to receive it, then that's going to limit your ability to find successful results in expanding your emotional and mental health.
Absolutely. Well said. Thank you very much. So we are going to wrap up our podcast today. I'm just so delighted that Brian was able to, he is part of the Healing Institute. We're still getting him oriented into being on the platform, but he's very much helping us get some of our videos so that we can explain to people who we are and what we're doing. So very grateful for that, Brian. Our vision, of course, is to have a community of health practitioners that will customize whatever you need as a client. It's all specifically customized. It's not one size fits all. And we are a community. So when you come as a client to the Healing Institute, you might choose Marie or Elle Marie, or you might choose myself or Reverend Dr. Kimmy, who does Egyptian Reiki. So you might want to check that out. You might choose, but you get us all because we get to know each other. We're not just a wellness directory of a list of practitioners. We actually get to know each other. We share back and forth our modalities so that when you as the client are coming to the Healing Institute for some assistance with your health and wellness, we can recommend all of us. Our motto is service with love. That is, we're very, very, very really, really want to be in service, and we definitely want to be with love. And we have a big ask. We are growing, and we would like you to share this podcast with your friends and your colleagues and your family, and just let people know that we're here for you. So today you got to meet another amazing practitioner, Brian Baird. He actually does hypnotherapy as well. So reach out to him. And I've put the information in the chat as to how to connect with him. And when I post this podcast this afternoon, later on our socials, his contact information will be in the comments. So please reach out to him. Thank you, everyone, for attending. And thank you, Brian, so much for being my guest co-host. We'll see everybody again next Friday on Heal the World Show podcast.
Everybody keep well.